Okay, so today we're going to be looking at A Course in Miracles,
Yeah.
specifically the text and workbook.
Right.
And I think this deep dive will help give people like an express lane to understanding this really complex but potentially life-changing work.
It's a fascinating piece of work.
It is.
For sure.
It's definitely not your typical self-help book.
Definitely not.
That's for sure.
Just for starters, the origin story is pretty wild,
Yeah.
right? It's claimed to be the words of Jesus
Yep.
as dictated to a psychologist named Helen Schucman.
I know. Talk about a bold claim.
Right.
But regardless of where it came from,
Yeah.
the ideas themselves are really what we're here to explore.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most fundamental concepts that we should start with is this idea of the two parts of the mind.
Yeah. That's a really central concept in the Course.
Yeah.
It basically differentiates between the ego mind, which it sees as the source of all of our, fear, doubt, and suffering.
Yeah.
And what it calls right-mindedness,
Okay.
which is basically our connection to a higher power or the Holy Spirit.
So it's like we have this internal battle going on between our ego,
Yeah.
which is constantly trying to keep us in this state of like fear and separation,
Right.
and this other part of us that's connected to love, peace, and unity.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Course actually uses specific terms to describe these two states of mind.
Okay.
So it talks about
Okay.
wrong-mindedness, which is the ego-driven state, and then right-mindedness for the state of connection to the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so what does right-mindedness actually look like in our everyday lives? I mean, is it just about being a good person?
Well, it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
I think, think about it this way.
Yeah.
Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic,
Okay.
right? So the ego's immediate reaction might be anger.
Yeah.
Frustration, even a desire to retaliate.
Totally.
But right-mindedness would ask,
Okay.
what might be going on in that person's life
Yeah.
that caused them to act that way?
Oh.
Maybe they're rushing to the hospital.
Yeah.
Maybe they're dealing with some personal crisis.
I see.
It's about shifting from judgment to understanding,
Okay.
from separation to connection.
Wow, that's a really powerful example.
Yeah,
So it's about choosing love over fear,
exactly.
even in those small everyday moments
Precisely.
that we all experience.
And the Course suggests that this shift in perception is actually the key to experiencing miracles in our lives.
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the Course has a pretty unique take on what miracles actually are.
Yeah, it defines miracles as shifts in perception
Okay.
that help us see the world through the eyes of love and forgiveness,
Okay.
rather than through the lens of the ego.
But if miracles are just shifts in perception,
Mm.
wouldn't that make them illusions too? Well, the Course acknowledges that both this world and the real world are ultimately illusions,
Okay.
but it suggests that these illusions serve a purpose. They're like training wheels,
Yeah.
helping us gradually move from a state of fear and separation to a state of love and unity.
So in essence, miracles, forgiveness, salvation.
Yeah,
They're all kind of pointing towards the same goal,
exactly.
remembering who we truly are.
Yeah. And the Course suggests that forgiveness is a key part of this process.
Okay.
It's not about condoning wrong actions,
Right.
but about recognizing that sin, as the ego defines it, doesn't actually exist.
But wait, if sin doesn't exist, then what are we forgiving?
It's about forgiving the illusion of separation.
Okay.
The belief that we're somehow separate from God and from each other. The Course even suggests changing the word sin to lack of love,
Interesting.
to remove the threat associated with it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So forgiveness is about shifting our perception from seeing ourselves and others as sinners to seeing everyone as perfect expressions of God's love.
Exactly.
Oh.
And it's this shift in perception that leads to true healing, both for ourselves and for the world.
Now, this brings us to another key concept in the Course.
Yeah.
The difference between knowledge and perception.
Right.
So the Course states that knowledge is timeless and certain, while perception involves the body
Right.
and is subject to change.
Yeah, it even says to perceive the truth is not the same as knowing it.
Okay.
Explicitly.
So true perception, the kind that leads to miracles and healing,
Yeah.
is about aligning our limited human perception
Yeah.
with the unchanging truth of God's reality.
That's the idea. It's about seeing the world through the eyes of love,
Okay.
recognizing the Christ in everyone and everything.
Now, all of this seems to imply that we have a lot more power over our experience than we might realize.
Right.
If our perception shapes our reality,
Yeah.
then wouldn't that mean we're essentially responsible for our own happiness?
Well, the Course definitely suggests that we have more agency than we might think.
Okay.
It teaches that our thoughts create our reality, and that by choosing to see things differently, we can change our experience.
Okay, but isn't that a lot of pressure?
Sure.
I mean, what if I'm having a really bad day and I just can't seem to shift my perception?
Well, Course acknowledges that this is a process, a journey
Yeah.
of gradually undoing the ego's hold on our minds.
Hmm.
It's not about instantly becoming a perfectly loving and forgiving being,
Yeah.
but about taking small steps each day towards aligning our thoughts and actions with our true nature.
So it's about recognizing that we're all works in progress
Exactly.
and that it's okay to stumble along the way.
Absolutely. And the Course emphasizes that we're not alone in this journey.
Okay.
We have the Holy Spirit as our constant companion, guiding us towards right-mindedness and helping us to see the world through the eyes of love.
This Holy Spirit sounds pretty important.
Yeah.
But if the Holy Spirit doesn't believe in time,
Yeah.
as the Course states, why does it use time as a teaching tool?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
It's a paradox for sure, but the Course suggests that the Holy Spirit works within our limitations.
Okay.
Using the illusion of time to help us gradually awaken to our true nature. It meets us where we are.
Okay.
And gently guides us towards a deeper understanding.
So it's about trusting the process.
Yeah.
Knowing that even though we might not be able to see the whole picture right now, the Holy Spirit is always there to guide us towards our highest good.
Exactly. It's about surrendering our ego's need to control and allowing ourselves to be guided by a power greater than ourselves.
All right. Well, this has definitely given me a lot to think about.
It's fascinating how the Course describes the ego.
Yeah.
It's not just some abstract concept.
Right.
It's portrayed as this relentless force that's constantly working to keep us trapped in fear and separation.
So it's like this inner saboteur that's always whispering doubts and anxieties in our ear.
Exactly. The Course defines the ego as the belief in separation from God.
Okay.
And from that belief stems fear,
Yeah,
guilt,
right.
and all the negative emotions that keep us feeling stuck.
And what's interesting is that the Course suggests that the ego often confuses impulses from the body with those from God.
Right.
Or the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it's like the ego is constantly misinterpreting our desires and needs, leading us down a path of seeking fulfillment in all the wrong places.
Which actually makes me think of the Course's concept of special relationships.
Yeah.
It seems to have a very specific take on how the ego plays out in our relationships with others.
Absolutely. It talks about how the ego can twist even the most loving relationships into opportunities for control, manipulation, and projecting our own unhealed wounds onto others.
Okay, so how do we avoid falling into that trap? How can we have relationships that are actually based on love and not just the ego's need for validation?
Well, that's where the Holy Spirit comes in.
Okay.
The Course suggests that the Holy Spirit can help us transform our special relationships from sources of conflict and pain into opportunities for healing and growth.
So instead of seeing our partner, friend, or family member through the lens of the ego, picking out their flaws, focusing on what they're not giving us.
Right.
We can choose to see the Christ in them.
Exactly. And it's not about pretending that the other person is perfect or ignoring real issues.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all on this journey together, all striving to return to a state of wholeness.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that line from the Course. Healing within a special relationship extends outwards, blessing others who believe that love is fear.
Right. It's like our individual efforts to heal our relationships can have a ripple effect, helping to shift the collective consciousness towards love and forgiveness.
Thinking about these relationships reminds me of another question I had. The Course says the body is neither good nor bad.
Right.
But then it also calls the body a potential weapon of the ego. Can you unpack that a bit?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Seems paradoxical.
Yeah.
But it actually makes sense when you consider the Course's overall message.
Okay.
The body itself is neutral.
Yeah.
But the way we use our bodies can either reinforce the ego's illusions
Okay.
or serve as a vehicle for expressing love and connection.
So it's not about denying the body or seeing it as inherently sinful,
Right.
but about recognizing that we have a choice in how we use it.
The ego might use the body to seek pleasure,
Okay.
to manipulate others,
Right.
or to harm ourselves or others.
Yeah.
But we can also choose to use our bodies to express kindness,
Okay.
to create beauty.
To connect with others
Yeah.
in loving ways.
I'm starting to see how all these concepts in the Course are interconnected. It's like this intricate tapestry where each thread represents a different aspect
Yeah.
of our journey back to wholeness.
That's a beautiful analogy. And it reminds me of another key concept in the Course.
Okay.
The atonement.
Yeah, that one always seemed a bit mysterious to me. How does the Course define the atonement?
It describes the atonement as the restoration of awareness of our original state of oneness with God.
Okay.
It's about undoing the illusion of separation created by the ego and remembering who we truly are,
Yeah.
perfect and whole, just as God created us.
So it's not about some external event or ritual,
Right.
but about an internal shift in consciousness.
Exactly. And the Course emphasizes that the atonement is not something we create,
Okay.
but a pre-existing principle of love that's always available to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's enacted through acts of love,
Okay.
through our willingness to see ourselves and others as God sees us. Which brings us back to forgiveness, right?
Absolutely.
Because the Course seems to say that forgiveness is essential
Mm-hmm.
for experiencing the atonement.
Absolutely. There's that powerful statement in the text.
Okay.
If guilt were real, atonement would not be.
Wow.
The idea is that if we truly believed in sin and guilt, there'd be no way to undo them.
Yeah.
But because sin and guilt are ultimately illusions created by the ego,
Right.
forgiveness becomes the key to dissolving those illusions and experiencing the atonement.
Wow. That's a really profound insight.
Yeah.
It makes me think about all the times I've held on to guilt and resentment,
Yeah.
punishing myself or others for things that, in the grand scheme of things, probably don't even matter.
It's so easy to get caught up in the ego's drama, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the Course reminds us that true forgiveness is about releasing those burdens and choosing to see ourselves and others through the eyes of love.
And it sounds like the workbook provides a lot of practical guidance on how to actually practice forgiveness in our daily lives.
Yes, the workbook is full of exercises and lessons designed to help us shift our perception and apply the principles of the Course to our everyday experiences.
Okay.
It encourages us to question our judgments, to practice seeing the good in others, and to choose thoughts that align with love and peace.
One of the concepts I found particularly intriguing in the workbook is this idea that nothing I see means anything.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty radical statement.
It definitely challenges our usual way of thinking, doesn't it?
It does.
But what the workbook is getting at is that the meanings we assign to things are often projections of our own thoughts and beliefs rather than inherent qualities of the things themselves.
So it's about recognizing that our perception is subjective.
Exactly.
And that we have the power to choose how we interpret the world around us.
Exactly. And the workbook exercises are designed to help us detach from our attachment to those meanings.
Okay.
And open ourselves to a more expansive way of seeing.
So it's about questioning our assumptions.
Yeah.
Letting go of our judgments and allowing ourselves to experience the world with a sense of wonder and curiosity.
Yes. And as we practice this kind of open-minded perception, we start to notice that our thoughts really do create our reality.
Right.
If we focus on fear and lack, that's what we'll experience.
Right.
But if we choose to see the world through the lens of love and abundance, our experience will reflect that shift.
That's a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, what are some practical steps we can take to start applying these principles in our own lives?
Well, the workbook encourages us to start with small, everyday moments.
Okay.
Notice when you're feeling stressed or anxious. And ask yourself, what thoughts am I believing that are creating this feeling?
Okay.
Can I choose a different thought?
So it's about becoming more mindful of our thoughts.
Exactly.
And choosing thoughts that align with peace and love rather than fear and judgment.
Exactly. And it's not about denying or suppressing our negative emotions, but about gently observing them and then choosing a more loving response.
It sounds like the workbook is essentially a training manual for the mind.
Yeah.
A guide to shifting our perception from fear to love and experiencing the peace and happiness that are our birthright as God's creations.
That's a great way to put it. It's about remembering who we truly are.
Yeah.
And choosing to live from that place of wholeness and love.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it seems like this idea of remembering our true nature is central to the Course's understanding of salvation.
Absolutely. The Course defines salvation as a return to our true nature as God's creations.
Okay.
A state of perfect peace and happiness that's free from fear, guilt, and suffering.
So salvation isn't something we achieve in the future,
Right.
but a state of being that's available to us right now.
Exactly. It's about remembering who we truly are.
Okay.
Rather than striving to become something we're not.
Right.
And this remembering is facilitated by the Holy Spirit, which acts as a bridge between our separated minds and God,
Right.
helping us see the world through the eyes of love and forgiveness.
It's like the Holy Spirit is constantly whispering the truth to us, guiding us back to our true selves. And through its guidance, we can experience genuine forgiveness, which the Course emphasizes is essential for salvation.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of guilt and judgment.
Right.
And seeing ourselves and everyone else through a lens of love.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And this type of forgiveness isn't about condoning wrong actions or pretending that pain and suffering don't exist. It's about choosing to see beyond the ego's illusions and recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every living being.
So ultimately, the Course in Miracles offers a path to freedom, a way out of the suffering created by the ego's illusions, by helping us awaken to our true nature as love.
That's a wonderful summary. It's about remembering our oneness with God and all creation.
Yeah.
And experiencing the peace and joy that come from aligning our minds with truth.
The Course provides tools and guidance to help us make that shift from fear to love and experience the miracle of our own awakening.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah, it has.
Let's move on to the final part.
Okay.
Where we can explore the concept of idols.
All right.
And wrap up our exploration of A Course in Miracles. So we've covered a lot of ground already, from the 2 parts of the mind to the power of forgiveness and the concept of the atonement. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I kind of want to explore before we wrap up.
Okay.
And that's the Course's take on idols.
Ah, yes, idols. It's a concept that might seem a little outdated.
Yeah.
Like something out of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
But the Course gives it a whole new meaning, a much more psychological and spiritual dimension.
So we're not talking about golden statues or anything like that.
Right.
Great.
The Course defines idols as anything
Okay.
we place above our connection to God or our true selves.
Okay.
It could be a person.
A possession, a belief system, even a certain image we have of ourselves.
So it's anything that we become overly attached to, anything that we rely on for our sense of worth or security.
Exactly. And the Course suggests that these idols, while seemingly harmless on the surface, can actually become roadblocks on our journey to spiritual awakening.
Because they're essentially distractions from the real source of our happiness and fulfillment, which is our connection to something greater than ourselves.
Precisely. They keep us focused on the external world, on seeking validation and security in things that are ultimately fleeting and impermanent.
That makes sense. It's like we're chasing after shadows instead of embracing the light that's already within us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And the Course encourages us to become aware of our own idols, to see where we've misplaced our trust and our love, and to gently release our attachment to them.
Okay, but that sounds pretty challenging.
Sure.
I mean, how do we even begin to identify our idols? They're probably so ingrained in our thinking that we don't even recognize them as such.
That's where the workbook exercises can be really helpful.
Okay.
They encourage us to look at our thoughts, our beliefs, and our behaviors with a more discerning eye.
Okay.
To question our motivations and to see where we might be clinging to things that are ultimately keeping us stuck.
So it's about cultivating a kind of inner honesty.
Yeah.
A willingness to see ourselves as we truly are, even if it's not always pretty.
Yes, and it's important to remember that this process isn't about judgment or self-criticism.
Okay.
It's about approaching ourselves with compassion and understanding.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we're all doing the best we can with the tools we have.
And trusting that the Holy Spirit is there to guide us.
Exactly.
To help us see our idols with clarity and to gently release our grip on them.
The Holy Spirit doesn't condemn us for our attachments. It simply helps us to see them for what they are. Illusions that are keeping us from experiencing the fullness of our true nature.
And as we let go of those illusions,
we
create more space in our hearts and minds for the love and peace that are our birthright.
That's beautifully said. It's like we're clearing out the clutter in our inner world,
Yeah.
making room for the light to shine through.
It's making me think of that line from the Course.
Mm-hmm.
Salvation is nothing more than the complete letting go of everything that is not love.
That's a powerful statement, and it really encapsulates the essence of the Course's message.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that true freedom and happiness come from aligning ourselves with love, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others.
And that this alignment with love is ultimately what leads to salvation.
Yes.
Which the Course describes as a state of perfect peace and unity with God.
Yes. And it's important to remember that salvation, as the Course defines it, isn't something we achieve in some distant future.
Right.
It's a state of being that's available to us right now. Right.
In this very moment.
Yeah.
If we're willing to let go of the illusions that are keeping us separate.
So it's about choosing love over fear, forgiveness over judgment, unity over separation.
Exactly.
It's about remembering who we truly are as God's creations and living from that place of wholeness and love.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that the light has come.
Yeah.
That salvation is already here.
Okay.
And that we can choose to experience it.
Yeah.
By aligning our minds with God's truth.
Wow. This deep dive into A Course in Miracles has been incredibly illuminating.
Yeah, it has.
It's definitely given me a lot to ponder, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe this is just the beginning of their own deep dive into this profound and transformative work.
I hope so.